Alrighty guys, for this part of the tutorial, you will need your sleeve. Now I've got 3 times 4 squares across. Okay, so you'll need your sleeve and you will need 4 stitch markers, 2 crochet hooks we'll talk about in a minute, scissors and your sewing needle to weave in your ends. Alright, we are actually going to be using a crochet hook to slip stitch our piece to the jacket. Alright, but before we do, just quickly letting you know, okay, now for my squares I used a 4mm hook to create my squares. So whether you use a 4, a 4.5, 5, it doesn't matter, 5.5, as long as you drop down a full hook size for slip stitching. It does help with tension, and for this part of the tutorial it'll keep it nice and tight and in place. Okay, so I'm going to use a 3mm for mine because I used a 4mm to create my squares. Now, why we need the stitch markers is we need to mark the jacket and we need to mark our sleeve. All right, so what I want you to do is, this is the right side of your work. Tail should still be there. If it's not there and you've weaved it in, doesn't matter, okay? If it is there, it should be at your base where your left hand is, the letter L, yeah? Your left hand. Just fold your work over so it's the wrong side showing, and that's the wrong side is the bubbled edge, and you can see it's all wrong, yeah? So you folded it in half. Now it doesn't matter if you have 4 across or 3 across for your width, and this is the width of the arm right here, okay? So this is the width of your arm, this is the length, all right? For me, I've got 4 squares across for the width of my arm, and for the length I have 3, okay? Not sure what you have because each size would be different, right? So now that you've folded it in half, grab a stitch marker, find the half, and then lucky for me, my half lands right in the middle of there. But if yours lands in the middle of one square, this is what I want you to do. If yours lands in the middle of the square and you go 1, 1, 1, 1, your stitch marker should go in the middle there. It can go in the last stitch of the stitch before or the first stitch, it doesn't matter. Just make sure it's in the middle. In fact, for this part, I would pop it just straight in the middle of your piece, all right? But if you're anything like me, and the center of your square is actually in the middle of the 2 squares, then all you need to do is pop your stitch marker in that stitch right there. And it's the slip stitched area, yeah? So that should now be the center of your sleeve. That's the shoulder, that's your wrist, and these are your side seams, all right? That's considering you had yours set up like mine, all right? So what you want to do is grab your jacket now. All right, so now just a quick heads up, I've already done one sleeve right there, yes? So grab your jacket and line up the base of your jacket. This is all sizes. You're lining up the base of your jacket like so. Now let's pretend that I haven't done that one sleeve, and let's all do the left side of your jacket. All right, so that's the left side of your jacket, that's the front of your jacket, and that's the outer side. That's where your seam line is going to be. So you go all the way up, straighten it up, the top, keep going. And for me, I've got the extra square here. Some of you may have that look. If you have that look and you don't have the extra square, because some sizes don't, all I want you to do is go along there, get to the outer edge and pop your stitch marker in the slip stitch of that space there. All right, so what you have is that. This is if your center doesn't match the center of a square, all right? But mine, I have the extra square there, right? So it's like this, and some of the sizes will have that extra square. So you go up, you go up, you go up, and you see that your shoulder is actually like that, all right? It's not like that. It's actually in the middle of a square. Now, if that's the case, you go over to this square open it up, grab your stitch marker and get the two corners. Corners in, two squares, and there you go. So let's pop it in the very first, let's get it closer. The very first stitch of the second square, right there. All right, so there's your corners, your squares, and your last two squares. It's the very first stitch of that square on your left hand, that side, right? That's where you pop your stitch marker. If your center of your shoulder lands on one square like that, but if it lands like that, then you need to pop your stitch marker on the slip stitch. All right, that's just to find the center of your shoulders so you can do this. Grabbing your, it's a bit difficult now because my jacket's almost done. Grabbing the piece that we just put our stitch marker on and line it up with this guy right here. Before you do, when you do this side, go to the opposite side of your jacket, of your sleeve, where you're going to do the other sleeve, and do the same thing here. All right, it's the opposite. Do exactly the same for the other sleeve and do it now so you're doing it at the same time. All right, so do that now and then pop your two sleeves together like so. Let's get it closer. And all you're going to do is open up this white one, which I've put the wrong way around there. Open up your stitch marker and pop it through the stitch marker on the other side, the same stitch. Remove that one. All right, and you've actually you've attached your sleeves. Now remember, that's the right side of your work, and this is the wrong side. All right, so you've got the wrong side there and the wrong side there, and we're going to sew along this. But before we do, what you need to do is count your stitches across. Now this is where it can get a little tricky. For the shoulder part, when you're counting your stitches, you are counting these little V's. Let's use a sewing needle so you can see it better. You are counting these little V's here. So you count it from that one. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. Count them all the way across. But when you get here, you go like this. You go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So when you get here, you're not counting that stitch as a 10th stitch. In this sewing, you're counting the space as the 10th. And then your slip stitch as the 11th. And then your space as the 12th. And then you go over here and you go 13, 14, 15. This is going to slightly change the sizing of your sleeve. Okay, when you count your stitches all the way across, before you do, you count this one here because this is your sleeve. All right, this is the part it needs to add up to. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way across. But when you get here, remember, you're going, let's just say it's 10, 11, instead of counting that as a stitch, you count that as your stitch, just coming across this way. But when you go here, you go 12, 13 in the space, in your chain space, and then you go 14, 15, 16. So it almost looks like you're skipping a stitch over here. You kind of are, but it's only on the front. So just count what's here all the way across to this corner, and when you get to this corner, you're going and you're counting your 1, and then you're counting 1 in the corner. So count that across here. Mine adds up to be 40. So yours will probably be different. So I need to count 40 stitches across for the shoulder of the sleeve and 40 stitches across for the shoulder of the jacket. So place a stitch marker on your whatever stitch yours is. Mine will be the 40th. And meet me back here once you're done and we'll talk about what we're going to do next. All right, guys, so where you should be, that's the right side of your work, right side, fold it over, and you've got your wrong side facing you and your wrong side facing the board. And you've got your stitch markers placed on both sides, right? This side, what I did was place my stitch marker in both sides, so they're ready to go, and we counted across, and mine counted 40. It actually counted 41 if I had to include that space. So what you want to do, once you've got your 2 stitch markers here, grab one and just pop it through the opposite side, and you can remove that one there. So that's where you're going to start slip stitching across that way, and you're going to work your way up to there. All right, but what I want you to do first, and this is something, it's not necessary for you to do this. You could just start your thread here and continue along and then add a new thread later. But what I'm trying to do here is save weaving in. So what I do is I grab the thread that we're going to start with. I put it across our piece like that. I start it with a little tail there. I hit the stitch marker with a little tail. Then I double it. And then I triple it. Yeah? Not necessary for you to do this. And I leave that long piece. And we're going to use that to sew the sleeve down later. But not now. Okay, not now. That's going to come later. And you've come up with this. All right, holding that there. You're grabbing the crochet hook that you're going to use to slip stitch with, the smaller one. You're popping your hook in the stitches, in the space. Oh, it was so far away. I'm sorry. In the space of this stitch marker stitch and the stitch across the back there. So you're popping it through both those pieces, yeah? Remove your stitch marker, grab your thread and pop it over your hook and just pull that loop through like so. All right. Now, just for this one moment, I usually pull that tail forward and we go over it. I'm not going to do that because it's going to confuse you because it's such a long tail. So just hold it in your hand at the back and you're chaining 1. Yeah. And from here, we're going to continue by putting our hook back in the same space and back in the same stitch that you were in. Pull the loop through like so and pull it through to the loop on your hook. Without splitting that yarn. I'm going to try that again. Back in, pull the loop through and pull it through the loop on your hook. You can let go of that tail once you've done that. And what you're going to do is go into the very first stitch on this side and the first stitch on the opposite side and start slip stitching across like so. Slip and slip both sides. Now hopefully yours matched up where you've got your 3 there and your 3 there. So you're on your 3rd stitch now and your 3rd stitch there. If it didn't match up, don't think you're wrong. That's just the way your count ended up. All right. So not everybody will have the same count. Okay. But mine's on the first stitch of the next cluster set and the first stitch on the next on the opposite side. I was lucky enough for mine to marry up. And I've split that yarn, be careful. It will split if you're using a smaller hook, it can happen, all right? And just keep going all the way across, making sure you're only going into the same stitch you're supposed to. Don't go back into the stitch before, you're going into the very next one on the opposite side, all right? Now we want to get to this section here where there is a divide. All right, so there's the last stitch near my center. Your center might be here on this side. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You still have to work the same way, right? So you go into the very next stitch or you go into the first corner, depending on where your center works. So I'm into the next stitch and I'm going to the corner space, yeah, and pull that loop through. Then I'm going into the very next stitch. And then we're going into, see that seam line, into the slip stitch of the seam line. Pull that through, and through. You would have your seam line here if you're working at the front, yeah? Then I'm going into the first stitch on this side. But if you've got a corner here, you're going into the corner. You're going to the corner of that side, pull the loop through, pull it through to that stitch and through to the loop on your hook. Now here's where it's a little different. You're going into that first stitch. Now normally you would go here, but I don't want you to do that because that's going to fill that section up too much. I want you to ignore that first stitch, go into the next stitch, and that's what I meant. So it's going to put your whole area a little bit out of whack, but not. It's hard to explain. It will be a little bit out of whack, But that's the way the stitches work on the opposite side. So you're on your last stitch here and you're almost on your first stitch on the opposite side. So don't stress too much about it. That's put your work out of whack. That is what I wanted you to do. When you come across the seam line here, that's going to straighten it all up again. Now, only because it gets too bunched up there, and that's why we do that. So let's try the seam line here. We're coming to it. This is the last stitch on that set. First stitch on the opposite side. And there's your corner. You're going into the corner, into the stitch. Pull that loop through like so. Now into the slip stitch on this side, if you can get it in. Yep. And then into your next stitch on the opposite side and pull that loop through. And you're going into the corner of this side, stitch on the opposite, pull it through. Now here you're going to do what you did before, but on the front you're going to skip that first one, go into the second one, and then you're going into the second one on this side. So it kind of eventually all marries up. Okay, that's what I meant by counting it, skipping that first stitch. I know it sounds a bit odd, but that it does work. It is weird, but it works. Now, if you didn't understand any of that and you don't mind the bunching up, that's fine. That's fine. You know, it's okay. All right, so just keep going all the way across. All right, I'm going to pop this on fast. Don't forget to do that corner section the same way I said. And when you get to this center stitch where your stitch marker is, we'll all get to that and we can work from there. All right, so off we go. Alrighty guys, now mine looks like it's not going to marry up, but it does. I've got 1, 2, 3 stitches left, and here I have the one there, the corner and the slip stitch. So we're going to remove my stitch marker like so and do just that. You can remove your stitch marker now because you know what you're doing. Into the next stitch, into your next stitch, pull the loop through, into the corner space, into the next stitch, pull the loop through, into your slip stitch, into your next stitch, pull the loop through, into your corner space, into your next stitch, pull the loop through. You're going to avoid that first stitch, jump into the second, go into the next one, which is the second, and pull those loops through like so. All right, I don't think I need to show you anymore. What I want you to do is just slip stitch across, get to that little corner right there. Let's bring that out. Get to that corner right there. In fact, what I'll do, we'll pop a stitch marker in that corner. Get to the stitch before the corner. Wait for me there, and we'll talk about what we're going to do next. All right, so once you get to this stitch marker, like I said get to the stitch before your corner, which I've done the stitch before my corner and the other stitch. Now we're just going to, let's remove the stitch marker. We're just going to do the corner stitch there and the next stitch on the opposite side, wherever that landed, it doesn't matter, yeah? Then you're going to chain 1. Just pull up a loop for a minute, pop your stitch marker in it for 1 moment, yeah? We're not going to cut that thread. We are going to use that thread to attach the rest, and I'll explain that in a minute once we open it up. That is now the front of your jacket, the center of the shoulder, and the back of your jacket. So all you want to do now is grab your front and pass it over to the back, and you're actually folding that sleeve over like so. All right. So that's your sleeve, and that's the base of your jacket. So your fronts and backs are here, your sleeve is there. It doesn't matter either way. All right. So remember this tail that we had here, the beginning, right there, you're going to ignore that tail. Yeah. You're going to use that tail here to weave along the sleeve. All right. So grab your hook again. See that stitch marker there? Your working yarn that you've been working on. All I want you to do is go back to that working yarn, but flip it so you're working along the sleeve. All right. Pop your hook in the working yarn back into the thread that we were just using, yeah? And it's going to be facing a little odd now. So all you've done is literally you slip stitch down here and you're turning the corner. That's all you're doing. So what you're going to do here is this is easier because everything should add up here. You are at the moment in the seam line and you've got a corner here. On the opposite side, you have your corner and there's your seam line, all right? So what you want to do is just go back into the seam line again, or even just back into the corner space on this side, and then find the corner space on the opposite side, pull your loop through and pull it through to the loop on your hook, all right? And here, you're actually going into that first stitch now. We weren't before, we were ignoring it. But for the side seams, you're going into the stitch there and into the first stitch on that side. Pull that loop through, pull it through, and pull it through to the loop on your hook. Into your second and into your second on the opposite side. Are we far away? Let's get closer. Sorry, guys. Pull the loops through like so. Into your third on the opposite side like so, and continue that all the way along, first and first. So there'll be no changing here, there'll be no seam lines, it'll just be straight all the way through in each stitch across. So your seam lines should match up. At the end, everything should match up. All right, so this is very simple. When you get to this section here, you're going straight into that. All right, it's very simple, very simple. Sorry about the close-up now. It's probably too close, isn't it? I just wanted to show you a little bit close there. Just get to your seam line. We'll pop this on fast real quickly, making sure you're going into every stitch, and off we go. All right, now we're getting to the final section there, and I'm actually at the space. You're going to the first space on this side, first space on the other, pull your loop through like so. Slip stitch on this side, slip stitch on the other. Everything should marry up. Okay. Space on this side, space on the other side. Now here's where we're going to go into that first stitch. We weren't doing that before, we're doing it now. First stitch, all right? The seam lines, they have to marry up perfectly, all right? So second stitch, and you're going all the way through. Kind of didn't make sense up the top, but it does make sense on the seam lines, okay? Because otherwise it's not going to marry up at the end right here. They won't marry up, all right? In the meantime, that's what I want you to do. You don't have to watch me do this part. You know what you're doing now. You're going into every stitch all the way across. Get corner, slip stitch, corner, and then go into that first stitch. When you get to this corner right here, wait for me there, and we'll talk about what we're going to do next. Alrighty guys, what I've done is I've slip stitched across, but I stopped a little earlier because I forgot to mention, and I'll explain it to you, when you get to that thread there. It's not too difficult, okay? That's the thread, that was the joining thread for our sleeve. So let's just drop it. If you've weaved yours in, that's great, but I haven't. But I thought I'd just show you what I do with it. All right, so it's the very last stitch I'm in. The last stitch on that side, pull the loop through, and through. Then it's first stitch of the very next cluster set. It's the last cluster set, yeah? And there's your first stitch right there. Pop it in the first stitch where your slip stitch is in. Just grab that tail. If you have it, if you've weaved it in, that's great. Just grab the tail and pass it at the back and just pull your loop through like normal. Yeah? Go into the second stitch. And a second on that side. Oh, without splitting it. Let's try that again. I've been splitting it all the way across actually. Third stitch, or should I say final if you think about it. And right in the corner you've got a space there and a space there. Pull the loop through, pull the loop through, pull the loop through, pull up a loop. We're going to cut it, but before we do, what I want you to do is check that everything is done perfectly. You might want to turn it inside out and check it. I've checked mine off air. I know mine is fine, so I'm going to cut mine. Now, normally I would actually leave the thread attached, work on the other side and the sleeve, come back and use this thread to start making the ribbing. That's what I would normally do, but I'm not going to do that here because I realise doing it on the other side is confusing. So we're just going to cut it here and we'll reattach later. All right, pull that thread through. Yeah, and what I want you to do is go to the opposite side. Now remember the opposite side, how we had the fronts and the backs loose like that. You've sewn up the side seam, you've sewn the shoulder seam and the side seam, and you still had that thread attached. See that thread that I got you to save in the beginning? It's probably too much now. I reckon it's too long, but anyway. What you do is you turn your work over to where the thread is. With the little thread here, before we do anything, grab your stitch marker, because if you're anything like me, my stitches have been sewn up halfway through a square for the back, both backs and the fronts. They've worked exactly the same. That's for my jacket. Yours might be lined right up to the corner and it's going to be easy. But for me, it's not. So for those of you who haven't lined up and are like me, you're not wrong. It's just that you've had the extra square that you used for your sleeve. So what I want you to do is find the first corner there. Go to the first corner on there. I had to think about where that corner was, yeah? Grab another stitch marker. Go to your first space before that corner and go to the first space before the other one. All we're doing here is lining it up so we don't end up crocheting crooked, which can happen, and I'll explain that to you in a minute. Now you go to your very next corner, the next space, sorry, and then the next space. And what you have is that where it looks like it may be wrong, but it kind of isn't, because if you calculated, you were going to go back 1, 2, 3 stitches. Over here, you're going back 1, 2, 3 stitches. Then you've got all that corner that you need to work on. And that means, see that thread there? This is why I asked you to keep your thread. What you want to do is just grab your hook and put it in the first space and pull that thread through that first space. Let me show you again close up so you know what I'm doing. There's your 3. That's your set, and that's your set right there. And it doesn't marry up because you've still got all of this here. And you need to attach all of this here before you even attempt the next 3 stitches. Now it's really, really tight for those of you who worked here. So all we're going to do is pop our hook in the space just before it, not the whole piece, just your space, and pull that thread through. Now it's a long thread for me, so it's going to be, oh, that's not too bad. All right, so you're pulling a thread through. Then you go into the space again, and you are working into a stitch there. Try to even your work so you end up in the same, in fact, take that out of there and put it in the last stitch there, and in the last stitch there. All right, so try to even it all out across here until you get to that stitch marker, and you'll find yourself in the right spot so the rest of the row adds up. If you don't do that, you'll end up like this at the end of your row. All right, so you need to adjust it to suit, and it looks like it's wrong, but it actually isn't wrong. It's just the way the jacket has come out. All right, so pull a loop through, chaining one, and you would now go into, let's get a close-up, nice close-up, into the slip stitch right there. If you can get in there, it's really tight now. Yeah, go across to any stitch there, and then have a look. 1, 2, and there's a tight one in there, 3, and you've got 1, 2, 3. So if you find you cannot find that tight stitch later, you'll be able to. I'll show you in a minute. This is only if you ended up halfway through your square, like I have. Oh, that didn't work. I've split the yarn. I'm going to try that again. Sorry there, guys. There's the stitch right there. Pull the loop through like so. And then, having a careful look at this stitch, we've gone through it. That's the stitch we need to go into now. There's a stitch right next to it. Okay, pull that loop through. And then you've got the second one right there. And I've gone straight through both of them. Second one and the second one. Pull the loop through. All right, you've closed up your corner. Then you've got your third one and your third one, which you are into already. Let me take the stitch markers out. All right, so your third one there and your third one there. Pull your loop through. All right, now you are on your first stitch of that set, first stitch of the next set, like so. And you have closed up that area, because what you needed to do was to close up that whole section to tighten up your underarm. It might have paid, to be honest with you, for those of you who are new to crochet, to have started your thread from the hair everywhere, to have started your thread from the beginning and just worked your way all the way. Oh, just pull the thread there. Gosh, all the way down to the other end. And that might have worked better for you. But I liked it better this way because we only have the few ends to weave in rather than a million ends. Now you'll know what you're doing with the rest of your side. Okay, everything should marry up. Whoops. Everything should now marry up. You go into your second stitch and into your second stitch of that set. Into your third stitch. Look at that split. Oh, I made such a mess before. Into your third stitch of that set. The bonus is I can go through that split now into that first stitch of that next set, which is your corner set, first stitch of the next set, which is your corner set on the opposite side, then your second and your second, then your third. This one's a little tight. I don't know what I did there, but it's tight. And your third on this side. And here you're doing a normal slip stitch into the corner space and a normal slip stitch. Did I split it? No. And a normal slip stitch into your into that slip stitched area and into the slip stitched area on the opposite side, and a normal slip stitch into your corner and into your corner of the next set. And then, because we're working along the side seams, you're going into that first stitch, which is right there. The first stitch of that cluster set, first stitch of that one, and going through, and then you've got your second, and your third, and your third. And you're going to continue like that all the way across. So what you did was you've straightened up this area, you've straightened it up, and you've reinforced it as well. So you've done a whole lot of straightening there, reinforced it, and then everything will still marry up. let's do that, at the end of the row, all right? So it'll all marry up to the next square, to the next square, and to the next square, all right? So you know what you're doing now because you did this with the sleeve, and now you're going to do this with the rest of the piece, all right? So head off on your own, continue slip stitching all the way across, get down to the base right here, and get ready for what we're going to do next. Alrighty guys, so if you played your cards right, I got the wrong thread there, you would have ended up around the last section here. I've done my second last stitch. Let me do the last stitch there of the cluster set. And then we've got our corner. Pop your hook in the corner, both sides, pull the loop through like so, pull up a loop, and of course if you played your cards right, you'd still have a little bit of tail left to do some weaving in. Now that was the idea of saving that thread. You've actually used one thread to do the whole thing. From the top to the sides, you've used one thread. How cool is that? Okay. Now you didn't have to do that. That was just my way of doing it. Otherwise you could have just started from the corner, pulled a new thread through, and then just ended up with more tails. All right, so speaking of tails, they're all here. Yeah, we're going to need to weave those ends in, but we're not going to do that right now. We're going to do it after we do the ribbing, okay? Now you're going to start on the ribbing of the sleeve. I wasn't going to do that, but I will do that. You've got to go back to your 4mm hook, yeah, or whatever hook you use to create your squares, go back to that. And you're going to now officially turn your jacket in the right way, okay? So that was the wrong way. Turn it in the right way. That's the right side of your work. And actually you can see, have a look at the stitching. It is so neat and tight, so it's not going to come undone, yeah? All right, so find your sleeves, and if you're not sure where they are, when you turn it in the right way, this is how it should look. I've only done one sleeve in the right way for now because we're going to work on that one. That's your front, that's your back, and that's your sleeve, all right? So you're going to need to work on your sleeve. What you're going to do, grab your new yarn, yeah? Grab your hook and find that's your front. There's your front and your back, yeah? That's your underarm there. That's your seam line, and that's your wrist, yeah? So what I want you to do, we're going to use a measuring tape, but pop your wrist there. If your cardigan or jacket goes over like that and literally folds there, you're going to be putting a single crochet 2 together across 2 stitches all the way across your row. If it's 3/4 of the way where it's there, then you're doing it in 1 stitch and then skipping 1. Okay, and we'll explain that in a minute, all right? Or you could just do it this way. This is the way I would normally do it. Grab your measuring tape and measure across this way. There's 22 centimeters or 9 inches. Measure your wrist. My wrist is rather tiny for a woman who's, you know, relatively big. Mine is actually 18 centimeters or 7 inches. I know that's double my size. So I can put a single crochet 2 together in every 2 stitches, in all the 2 stitches across, not every 2 stitches, all the 2 stitches across. But if your wrist works out to be 27 or 28, you may need to do like 2 together through the first 2 and then 1 into the next. 2, 1 into the next. And we'll explain that as we go along, all right? So that's just a rough amount. If that is double your wrist, then you need to do 2 together across your piece, all right? And you'll see that in a minute what I mean by 2 together. So that's your underarm. Go all the way down here to your wrist. Find the center of your wrist there. Move everything out the way. There's your center. You've got your seam line. Pop your hook in the corner before the seam line. Hopefully you can't hear that rain because it's coming down cats and dogs outside now. Don't you love it? Grab your new thread. She's so distracted. Pop it over your hook, pull the loop through, and just, oh, where's your tail? That's a bit of a short tail. Make that a longer. Grab your tail, make it long enough for weaving in later. Just pass it forward for a minute, lock it in with a chain, and you're going to do a single crochet 2 together. You know what? Pop the thread at the back. Normally I would go over it, but I want you to see what I'm doing here. All sizes need to do this part, all right? It's single crochet 2 together. Pop your hook in the space, pull a loop through, 2 loops, go into the very next space. So you're ignoring your seam line, go into the next space, pull a loop through, 3 loops, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops, grab your stitch marker and pop it in that space there. Now, if you've measured your wrist and your jacket is huge, like it's double, yeah? You're doing 2 together all the way through. But if you've measured your wrist and it's only halfway, if it goes like that and it's only halfway, this is what I want you to do, all right? You pop a single crochet in your very next stitch, which is that one there, and then single in the next 2. 1 and 2 together. Single in your next, and then single in the next 2. All right, I'm going to show you all that again, but I'm doing single 2 together all the way across because mine is double my wrist. So for everyone who wants to do their 2 together anyways, this is what you do. You pop your hook in the stitch, pull a loop through, hold it there, go into the very next stitch, pull a loop through, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. Being careful not to go into that stitch that you're already in. You go into the next one with 2 and the next. Then you've got 3, yarn over, pull through. And you're doing that all the way through. Now remember, if your jacket is not as big for your wrist, it's only 3/4 your wrist, then you need to do 1 in one stitch, 2 together in the next 2. 1 in the next, 2 into the next 2. All right? But for me, it's 2 together all the way across. Now remember, you're using the same hook that you used to create your squares, yeah? And just do that all the way through your piece. And we'll just get to the one of the seams so I can show you what to do. 2 and 2, 2 and 2, 2 and 2. All right, we're at that corner area. With the corner, we're going to ignore the join in this case. 1 into the corner, hold it there. 1 into the next corner, hold it there. 2 together. If you've ended up with 1, just put 1 there and do your corner and your next stitch together. I'm sorry, your corner and your next stitch, which is your corner and that stitch there. All right, but I wouldn't worry too much about it. If you mess up 1 stitch, it's not going to be too noticed. So a bit of heads up there. So 2 together in your next 2, that first stitch and that second stitch and the next 2. The way the sleeves work, you can get away with fudging it, okay? The only thing is there has to be a certain amount across to make your ribbing work later. And again, that doesn't matter either. And I'll explain that to you as well. So there's no right or wrong way of doing this part, okay? All it's doing here is tightening your sleeve so it fits better around your wrist. Now I found that it fits around my wrist, but it's not as tight as I thought it would be. All right. Oh, that didn't work. All right, I don't need to do any more. I think you know what you're doing. It's going to bunch up like this. That's normal. I want you to continue doing your 2 together all the way. Get to the end of this area. Get to your last few stitches if you like. Meet me there and we'll talk about what we're going to do next. Alrighty guys, so here I am at the end of this round. And of course I said to you to get to your last few stitches. Now don't stress if you have only 1 stitch left. Just put a single crochet in there. If you have the 2 like me, then you 2 together across like so. Now you're not going to do anything here because you've already joined that corner with your first corner. You're just going to slip stitch into the stitch with your stitch marker. I also forgot to tell you that your sleeve will twist a lot, so you've got to untwist it during each, when you're going around, it'll end up like this, so you may have to untwist it occasionally Just turn it around and untwist a bit. So what you have now is kind of like it's still a big gap. Like you're thinking, are you sure that's going to close up? It will. So it's still a big gap right now. Okay. So what you're going to do, and this is all sizes now, and this is where you really should have made it a certain amount of stitches across, but we can fix this part. So you're chaining 1, 2, and 3, and it'll be classified as 1 double crochet in this round. All right. So there you go. And now what you're going to do, now remember you're in this stitch, so you don't want to put another one in there. You're going into the very next stitch, which is right next to it, with a double crochet. Now you know those, we've been doing them in our border rounds here. All right, next stitch, double. Next, double. Next, double. Next, double. And so on, all the way across your sleeve. All right, so double crochet into every stitch. This is all sizes. Get to your stitch marker right here, meet me there, and we will talk about what we're going to do next. Alrighty guys, so here I am at, oh, so far away. Here I am at the end of the round, yeah, and I have one last double crochet to pop in there. Get a little bit closer in a minute. All right, the only reason I'm close is I just want to show you that that is a slip stitch and you don't go in there, and that is your first double crochet. And I may have even split the stitch here. I have. Slip stitch into the stitch with your stitch marker. Okay, so just find a stitch to slip stitch into. It'll be a little bit tight the first time, but after that, it'll sort itself out. Chain 1, 2, and 3. In this round, we are going to work on what we call front post double crochets and back post double crochets. So you're going to ignore the chain 3 throughout your rounds. Before we start, I want to show you that the top little V's you see here are your stitches. These stems that you see are called posts. So when we talk about front posts, you put your yarn over your hook, you pop your hook in through the front, around that post and back out into the front. All right, pop a loop over it and then pull it right through, and you've got 3 loops on your hook, but you've gone around the post, not in any stitches, yeah. But you've gone around the post and not in any stitches. I wasn't in frame then. Yarn over the hook, pull through 2, yarn over your hook, pull through the last 2. That is a front post. Yarn over your hook, we're going to do a back post now. Before we went through this way for our front post. For the back post, we're going through the back, around the front and into the back. Pop your yarn over your hook and pull that loop through. Feels a little awkward to begin with, but when you get used to it, it becomes very easy. Yarn over your hook, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2. Front, back all the way through. So yarn over your hook, we're going to do a front post, and that's through the front, into the back, around that post and out through the front again. Yarn over your hook, pull that loop through. 3 loops, yarn over, pull through 2. 2 loops, yarn over, pull through the last 2. Yarn over your hook, back post. So you go around the back, into the front, back into the back again, pull that loop through. 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2. 2 loops left, yarn over, pull through the last 2. So what have you done? Front, back, front, back. You're going to start again. Front, 3, yarn over, 2, yarn over, last 2. All right, now we're working on the back post. Yarn over your hook, through the back, round the front and into the back again. Pull a loop through, 3 loops, yarn over 2, 2, yarn over 2. And front. And back. All right, front. And back. All right, I'm not going to let you sit here and watch me do these stitches. It can take a while all the way across. So what I want you to do, let's try that, is do your front, back, and you've got to start with your front for the next one. Front post, back post, all the way across, get to your very last stitch right there, and I'll meet you there once you're done. Alrighty guys, here we are at the end of this round. Now initially you should have ended up with a front post. So I've got my back post there, I'm going to do my front post right there. Now don't stress if you didn't end up with a front post. If you've ended up with a back post, it doesn't matter, because what you're going to do now is just slip stitch into that first stitch, which is a chain 3 stitch right there. Pull the loop through. So it doesn't make a difference, because this stitch here will just act as an in-between, all right? But initially you should have a front post there, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, 1, 2, and 3. Place your stitch marker in the top of that stitch, and that's never going to change now for the next 9 rounds, okay? So yarn over our hook. See that front post that we did? Guess what? We're going to do a front post in it. And it's going to be a lot easier now. So you're going around the whole post, but being careful not to end up like down the base. You're going around the post, the space up the top there, yeah? So around that post, pull the loop through and do your front post on top of your front post and your back post on top of your back post. All right, around the post. It's a little awkward this first round. I think it should be a lot easier, to be fair, than the other round. There's your front post, and it's a front post. How can you tell which one's which? The front post will be pushed forward. The back post will be pushed back. When you see it pushed back, that's a back post. Yeah. And when you see it pushed forward, that's your front. All right, simple, simple, simple. Very, very simple. Front coming up right now and back for your next one. And be careful, you might find it awkward some stages. As you get further in, like into the very next round, you will find that these posts will be easier to get into. All right, that's just the first 2 rounds that are kind of a little awkward, but later it becomes a lot easier. Being careful not to do a half double. Make sure you're doing your doubles. Yep. All right, I don't think I need to show you anymore. It's very basic. I've just done a front post there, by the way. So you're doing your front post, back post all the way across until you get to that second last stitch. And you may also notice that this, oh, it's so big my hand there, is tightening up now as we go along. All right, can you see how it's tightening up? If it's already too tight, then you need to take yours undone and change the amount of spaces that you've gone through. So before, when we did single crochet 2 together all the way in the round, you might need to do single crochet 2 together, single in the next, single 2 together, single in the next. And if you've done that and it's still too tight, take this undone. Fix it now, yeah? You just do single in each stitch all the way across until you get to the end. Yours might be a little loose, but it's better being a tiny little bit loose than really, really tight and it doesn't fit your wrist. All right, so let's just do that. Double crochet front post, back post, all the way through until you get to that stitch marker there. Don't forget, my next stitch was a back post. Not sure where you landed, but keep your eyes peeled on where you're going into, yeah? Front post, back post, get to that stitch marker, and I'll meet you there once you're done. Alrighty guys, so here I am at the end of this round and I've done my back post there. I need to do my final front post, and you should always land on the same post at the end of the round. So if you had a front post at the end of the round in the beginning, that's what you should land on. If you had back posts at the end of the round, then that's what you should land on, making sure that each post is above each post, and I'll explain that in a minute. Let's slip stitch to join first, like so. Remove that stitch marker, chain 1, 2 and 3, stitch marker in that stitch, top stitch there. Just grab another stitch marker and pop it in the loop for a minute because we're going to have some explanations. All right, So I'm going to pop this on just through my hand there, just to show you what this looks like. And it looks like that. All right, so it still looks a little loose, but the more rounds we do, this is going to tighten up. All right. And so what I want you to do now is firstly, make sure that you're all correct. See how you can see the front posts have got the bubbled edge and the back posts are turned in, front post is up, back is in. Make sure that is all correct. Get rid of that tail. And before you continue, because now what you're going to do, which is very simple instructions, we've done 2 rounds here, 2 rounds. We've done actually, if you think about it, we've done 4 rounds. We did a round of single crochet, a round of doubles, and then 2 rounds of your front post and back post. So initially we've done 4 rounds, but we're not going to count that as 4. We're going to count our ribbed area as 2 rounds. So you need to have 10 rounds altogether. However, if you have made an extra square, like you've got 1, 2, 3, well, I've got 1, 2, 3 from that's where the front is. I've got 1, 2, and 3. If you've made a 4th square, then you need to stop right here. Or if you want to tighten that a little more, you could do a round of single crochet front post, single crochet back post, which I can explain. I'll do it right now so you can see it. That is if you've finished here. Let's assume you've finished here, and I'll just start it over here so that it doesn't affect our work. Just pretend like we've chained 1 only, not chained 3, that we've chained 1. So if you're up to the length you already need, but it's really wide still, then all you're doing is popping your hook around your front post, pull a loop through, 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2. Back post, pull through, 2 loops, pull through 2. And front post and so forth. That's a single crochet. That will really tighten up your work. Single crochet front post, single crochet back post. If you find that it's still really big, all right, if you've done your rounds and because you have, I don't know, let's say 4 squares instead of 3, I've got 1, 2, and 3, and you've done 4 squares and you find, try that on and you find that that already fits here, I would stop there. Cast off and weave in your end, which is what we're going to do later, or move to that time there. If you're at the length of the sleeve that you already need, move to that time there. If not, your job now, if you've only done 1, 2, 3 squares across, and it kind of is like that, yeah, you need to do the amount of rounds that I did for the other sleeve. All right, so notice the other sleeve, it's made exactly like that, and it looks like it's not going to make it. Doesn't it look like it's not going to go thinner, but it does, yeah? So you need to do the amount of rounds here that I did for this. And this one is 10 rounds altogether. So we've done 2, so you need to do another 8 rounds. That is if this is too short for you, if it's around here. But if it's long, just do the amount of rounds that you need to get to the length that you like. So try your jacket on. This is what I mean by adjusting your jacket to suit your size. You can make your jacket to suit your size. You don't have to do the amount of rounds that I'm doing. I'm going to do another 8 rounds, but that's not necessary. But you can do the amount of rounds that you like, all right? But in the meantime, for everyone else whom his jacket is fairly short, I want you to do 8 more rounds. Meet me back here once you're done, and then we will talk about what we're going to do next, all right? Head off on your own, repeat that round that you just did 8 more times, and I'll meet you back here once you're done. Alrighty guys, here we are at the end of our 8 rounds. Now altogether you should have 10 rounds from the first front post, back post round that we did, all right? So 10 rounds altogether. If you don't have 10 rounds, but it still fits you nicely, that's fine. How do we check? Pop your hand in. Oops, pop your sleeve in like that. Pop your arm in there. If your sleeve is right there, you need to do another few more rounds. 2 rounds, 3 rounds, 4 at the most. Once you get to 16 altogether, it can get a little awkward, all right? So do 16 rounds the most. I would get right up to 12 if you want, but mine, I'm very short. I'm tiny. Mine reaches around there, and I'm going to leave that because after a few wears and a few washes, it's going to come down a little more. Very little, but it will come down a bit. And I've noticed if you leave them too long now, by the time a few washes happen, it's like that. And it's up to you, yeah. If you don't like the width and you want it tighter, then you can do a single round of single crochet, front post, back post, but that will really tighten it up. And normally I would do it, but I'm not going to do that with this piece, okay? But for now, if you're happy with everything, finish the round. And what am I up to? I've got another one to do, a front post right there. Like so. Slip stitch into the stitch which I've split with your stitch marker in it, like so. Remove that stitch marker, chain one, cut your thread, or check it first, make sure you're happy with it all, and then just pull it through like so. Right now you have a whole lot of threads in there which we're going to weave in. So what I want you to do now real quickly is turn your work inside out again, just this one sleeve, pull it through, find all your tails. You'll have a few, all right? And just grab your your sewing needle. First thing we're going to do is this one here, the very last one. We're not going to waste too much time sewing in threads, but I just wanted to show you the first few, all right? So you're here and your thread is pulling that way. So turn it, make sure your work is on the inside, find the back loop. It's not the actual stitch right there. It's like the neck of the back of the stitch, and pop your sewing needle through and then just pull that tail at the back, all right? And now it's on the inside. So go and find some little threads here to sew into, and then just sew down your post. And remember, this will not be seen from the outside because this is the back post if you think about it, yeah? So come down that way. Oh, I might want to come down a little more if you like. It's whatever suits you, you know, it's your prerogative on how you're going to weave these tails in. I would go back in the other direction, making sure that you are splitting stitches along the way, threads, stitches, whatever. If you're really worried about whether you're going through, check it. But I don't think it'll be noticeable because it's in that back post. So even if you make a mistake, no one's going to see it, yeah? And it's around here somewhere, down the middle there somewhere. No one's really going to see it unless you turn it over and say, here, check out my seam line. No one's going to do that. It won't be noticed anyway. So there you go. I've done it 3 times. 3 times is enough. Give it a cut, and that thread, your very last thread, is done. All right. Now, just these ones right here, real quickly. They're awkward too. They're not exactly tucked in anywhere. They're sticking out. So grab one. It doesn't matter which one. And my tail's really fray on that one. It happens when you've left it for too long. It kind of frays a little bit. Or it's just one of those things. Now this one here, again, you will have a knot attached to it. Don't stress. Find an area where there's a little stitch. Remember that this may show, okay, because this is on your actual work. So if you want, you can go through some of the stitching there, which I would. Yeah, that's your single crochet 2 together. Yeah, it's a little awkward down there. So you're going through a few of those threads, go back in the other direction again. Give it a cut, and that's tail number 4,622 because you would have done heaps of tails in this. Don't you love it? 4,228. Right, anyway, that's the wrong side. I want you to cut your ends on that and to cut the end. Oh, actually down here you can leave it. We're going to crochet over the tail ends, all right? We'll crochet over those when we are doing our border rounds, right? But for now, make sure all the other tails that you see dangling around, wherever they are dangling, and give them a cut. Turn your work in the right way, and then I need to give you some instructions on what you're going to do next. All right, so go ahead and do that now. But before you go, I'm going to give you the full instructions. There's your sleeve that you've done, right? Now your job is to head off on your own and do exactly the same with the other sleeve. You need to attach it down the top where your shoulder edge is, then across the side of the sleeve and then down the front, whichever way you want to go. It doesn't matter. You can go down the front first and then cross that way. It doesn't matter. All right, whichever way your thread takes you. But what I want you to do is to complete that second sleeve with the ribbing and everything. Meet me back here tomorrow or the next day for part number 10. Make your second sleeve. Meet me back here in a couple of days' time or so, and we will complete the rest of our jacket. Yay, get excited. All right. Now, don't forget, guys, to join us on our lives at 4 p.m. Wednesday afternoons, 10 a.m. Saturday mornings, Melbourne, Australia time. Marry that up with your country, all right? In the meantime, thank you for watching. My name is Mary. This is Crochet Designs. Good luck creating your second sleeve, and ciao for now.